What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Today's episode of the podcast is our preview of the NFC East division for the upcoming NFL season. If you missed our previews of the NFC North and the AFC North, those came out last week, and you can find those on this feed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can find Fouled Out. And then this Friday, we are dropping our preview of the AFC East, the home of my beloved six-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots, who are not supposed to be very good this year, but I'm still looking forward to previewing that and continuing to preview these divisions every Tuesday and Friday until Matt and I have previewed all 8 divisions ahead of the NFL season, leading into our week 1 podcast where we will finish up our playoff picks with wild cards and then give you the award winner predictions as well. MVP, Rookie of the Year, all that good stuff. But before we get started, just a reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Really appreciate you guys listening, and we would love to hear from you. As part of our divisional previews, Matt and I are giving bold predictions and hot takes for every division, and we would love to hear yours. Email them to us. We're going to read our favorites on the Week 1 podcast, and if we read yours, you can get a free Fouled Out hat. And they're pretty sweet hats. I got a bunch of friends who have them, and they all love them. So we'll mail one to you if we pick your hot take and read it on the Week 1 podcast. So send those in and then tune in for that podcast to see if yours gets selected. But for now, let's go grab Matt and let's preview the NFC East. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, ready to preview the NFC East for the upcoming NFL season. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right.
Is the NFC East like our most jointly disliked division in the NFL?
Yes.
Because Matt feels a certain type of way about the Cowboys, for sure, after all the run-ins they've had with the Lions over the years. And then this division also contains the only 2 teams to ever beat Tom Brady in a Super Bowl, the Giants twice, and then the Philadelphia Eagles. So I feel like not a favorite division for either of us.
No, it's pretty shit.
Yeah. Let's just skip this preview. Let's just go to the next division because no, I'm actually
There are no playoff teams in this one.
Who do you pick to win? Nobody. I actually am pretty interested to talk about this division because I feel like this is a division where some of the really big narratives I've been hearing so far this offseason are ones where I just feel completely the opposite way. And we'll talk about one in my biggest narrative, but it is an NFC podcast today. So you are leading off with your biggest narrative for the NFC East this season.
Well, I mean, I'll put it pretty bluntly. Can Dak prove that he has a fucking sack? I'm so sick of all the fucking hype that he gets after like this sprinkled in like really, really good regular seasons. But he is the absolute most unreliable quarterback the moment the playoffs hit. It's to the point where I would rather roll the dice on, like getting back into the QB market than just ride it out with Dak because you already know what your answer is. He has everything to prove. What he's done so far, it might as well be a blank resume.
Yeah, he's 2-5 in the playoffs in his career right now. Obviously, a lot of those losses coming in the first round, including last year where the Cowboys became the first 2 seed ever to lose to a 7 seed, which
they got absolutely mollywopped too.
I'm still so mad at us for not picking that because sometimes the memes are the memes for a reason. And we should have known that if any team was ever going to lose as a 2 seed to a 7 seed, it was going to be the Cowboys and that they were going to lose to the Packers because the Packers absolutely own them in recent playoff history.
New rule is always follow the memes.
I feel like Dak is part of this like quarterback class. I think I talked about this when we did quarterback rankings last, is that I have this glut of like the quarterbacks kind of between 13 and 16 or 13 and 17 that are just super interchangeable for me.
Yeah.
And I don't really trust any of them to win a playoff game. And it's like, I know some of them have before, like some of the guys I'm going to name, people are going to be like, Adam, that guy's won multiple, blah, 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 whatever. But it's like Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, like just these guys who some of them will put up better regular season stats than others. Like obviously Dak Prescott led the league in touchdown passes last year.
Yeah.
And Kirk has had some really good regular seasons as well. But when it comes to nut crunching time in the playoffs, do you trust these guys?
Yeah.
And I think if you're anybody outside of Dallas, that the answer has to be no. And yet, like big media personalities keep putting him like top 10. They're just like, well, look what he did in the regular season. And then he threw for a lot of yards in that playoff game, but basically all of them came after the game was already over.
Yeah.
And it was
when
just
you're already
time.
down 4 scores, like, I don't care how many yards you put up.
But people will be like, dude, he threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. It's not his fault. And it's like if you watch the first half of that game, in large part, it was his fault.
Yeah.
You know, he also threw 2 interceptions in that game. There was multiple turnovers and like, so
like you could almost argue that he was leading the charge on whose fault it should be.
He was up there. There was
there was a lot of people who deserve a lot of blame in that game. There's a lot of it to go around. You can argue he's at the top of that ladder, but if he's not more than a couple rungs down.
I'm going to say something that is probably going to get us the most hate mail of anything I'm going to say this entire season. It's not the first part, it's the second part. But I feel like Dallas Cowboys quarterback is just like one of those positions where whatever guy plays that position gets elevated in the media, specifically because he's the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the part that's going to get us hate mail. Dak Prescott reminds me a lot of Tony Romo, a guy who put up great regular season stats, lots of fun wins in the regular season, choked every single opportunity he got in the playoffs, never made it very far.
He
never
taught him everything he knew.
Is like a Sith Lord and his apprentice getting struck down. He's like, I'm taking your powers. But this is just like almost our entire lifetime. This has been the Dallas Cowboys, right? Like since we started watching football probably in the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, this has been the Dallas Cowboys. And I wrote this down for win ranges later, not to step on it, but the destiny of the Dallas Cowboys is that they will win 10 or more regular season games, might win their division like they did last year. They will lose in the playoffs in brutal fashion, and probably to a team that has a much worse record than they do. This is the destiny of the Dallas Cowboys. Every year. I said it last year. I'll say it again this year.
We'll obviously get to it later. But this year I definitely I changed my win range from what I felt like they are as a team and quality to account for the fact that we know they're going to get probably at least 3 bailout wins this year. Like games they absolutely should lose, but like the NFL, it's like, no.
The Dallas Cowboys cannot fulfill their destiny of getting embarrassed in the first round of the playoffs unless they set themselves up for people to think they're better than they are first.
Yeah.
They have to win double-digit games because they have to be in a position to shit the bed. If they make the playoffs as the 7 seed and lose, it's like, okay. No, they have to be the 2 seed or the 3 seed. They have to lose to whatever 9 and 8 playoff team barely gets in. It has to happen. This is destiny. Time is a flat circle.
I mean, though, if they made the playoffs as the 7th seed, the media would still be hyping them up as like, you know what? Like they can take down the 2 seed.
They could beat the 49ers. No, they can't. And they won't. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because my biggest narrative is about the other big team in this division,
Yeah.
But I think it is an interesting point to look at like all the big contracts that have been handed out in Dallas.
Yep.
And the fact that like there's a chance they could lose CD Lamb, who's their best player, because they've paid everybody else. And Jerry's like, now this is where you want to draw the line, Jerry, where you're like, we gave big money to Zeke, we gave big money to Dak and all these other guys. But CD Lamb, one of the best receivers in the league, CD Lamb is where Jerry Jones wants to shut the purse. This is the hill that you're going to die on, Jerry.
Like
Unbelievable.
one of the two players on that roster that you absolutely have to pay.
Yeah. And they're like, we don't know. Maybe we'll trade him to Kansas City this year. My biggest narrative for the NFC East this year, did Philly really fix their defense? Because I keep hearing that Philly fixed their defense. I keep hearing that Philly's a contender and an unstoppable machine, but are they? I need to see the proof because they were 10-1 at one point last year, coming off 3 straight wins over Dallas, Kansas City, and Buffalo. Through the early part of the year, the pass defense was horrible, but the run defense was absolutely incredible. And then suddenly after their bye week, the wheels absolutely fell off. Before their bye week, the run defense was allowing 66 yards per game, which would have been first place in the NFL last year. After their bye week, the run defense was allowing 145 yards per game, which would have been last in the NFL last year. So they literally went from first to last and like allowed double the rush yards per game in the process. The pass D kind of sucked all year and they finished 30th. So they spend a ton of capital fixing that defense. They spend their top 2 picks on defensive backs in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean.
Mm-hmm.
So they double dip there. They re-sign CJ GJ. They go out and sign Devin White, Zach Bond, Bryce Huff, all these linebackers. They got rid of Matt Patricia, which when we heard
smartest move they made.
Yeah, when we heard that Matt Patricia was taking over the defense last year is when we said on this podcast that Philly is absolutely fucked.
Yep.
They get rid of him and they bring in Vic Fangio. But I think the question still remains is like all that stuff you did this offseason, is that enough to fix the defense and take it from like they were 10-1, they finished 11-6 and then instantly lost the playoff game to Baker Mayfield and the Bucks. Did you actually fix it? Or are we going to come back next year with Nick Sirianni as the head coach and just see a bad defense all over again? Because like I like Quinyon Mitchell, I like Cooper DeJean, but you're bringing in 2 rookies and CJ GJ, who was hurt most of the year last year, to try to fix that pass defense, which was 30th in the NFL and got tore up by Mac Jones to start the year last year. So are we really going to see an improvement? And, you know, you spent big money on Saquon Barkley, who is a really nice luxury item to have for your offense, but like really was not a need after last season. Like I feel like there's a ton of running backs they could have plugged in and just been fine and spent that money elsewhere. So everybody's celebrating in Philly and being like, we got Saquon Barkley, we're going to win the Super Bowl. And I just don't believe that right now.
Well, I mean, there's been rumblings too about just like infighting between Hurts and Sirianni.
They feel like my bad vibes team so far this year.
Yeah.
Where apparently Jalen Hurts was like calling other teams and like calling his coaches at Alabama and being like, how do we fix this? Because it's so bad. Also heard those stories about a New England Patriots quarterback recently who is no longer with the New England Patriots. So like those things are not good. And Nick Sirianni is still the head coach after what happened last season. Like they laid all the blame at the feet of the coordinators again.
Yep.
And they're just like, oh, we'll switch out our coordinators and spend some money and it'll be fine. Yeah. And I just don't know if that's the case.
Do this every year.
Yeah, we're just going to do coordinators every year. So like they're on their 3rd set of coordinators in 3 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying they can't be good because they obviously have a lot of nice pieces.
Yeah.
Someone needs to show me they fixed their defense before I just believe that this team is a Super Bowl contender again.
If we're honest, there's a world where they fix this defense and like this team still takes a step back. the offense at the end of last year was a nightmare as well. Now we're sitting here like they're spending big money on a running back, and like there's infighting between the head coach and their players. Like, yeah, it sounds like we are a far cry from a team that is like ready to go and like win games against other professional teams that are working cohesively together.
Yeah, we'll see. I have another major concern about them that I wrote down for win ranges, but I'll mention it here real quick, is that also just lost the best center in the league, or
Yep.
like a guy who's a top 3 center at the very least.
Yeah.
And a lot of that Eagles offense was based around the mobility and athleticism of their offensive line.
Mhm.
And we've pretty much like never seen a center who's as mobile and athletic as Jason Kelsey
Yeah.
was, even last year when he was a little bit older. So like the leadership he brings,
Yeah.
the ability on the field, like I think that's a major concern for the Eagles. You know,
Yeah.
especially because now the NFL won't cheat to get you to the Super Bowl and get a Kelsey versus Kelsey with Taylor Swift, like, you know, they did the last 2 years. All right. Win ranges for the NFC East. Let's go to what our expectations actually are for
Yeah.
these 4 teams. Why don't you start with your win range for the Dallas Cowboys?
I have them from 8 to 11. I think they're like honestly an 8 or 9 win team, but we know how the NFL is, and they're gonna get some wins that they really shouldn't get because they always do. So, we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, like, I don't see them getting much higher than 10 wins.
8 is way too low. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Like I said earlier, they cannot fulfill their destiny of massively disappointing their entire fan base unless they get their hopes up first. There has to be double-digit wins. I said between 10 and 12. Over under in Vegas is 10.5, which I just feel like is the perfect over
Yeah.
under for Dallas, because it's like, yeah, they're going to win double-digit games, but can I also bet against them to lose their first round playoff game now on August 12th when we're recording this podcast, please? They're built to win regular season games. And like I said, I say the same thing every year about Dallas, is just like, yes, people will think they are good, and then they will lose to a 9-8 playoff team like they did last
Yeah.
season. Losing Tyron Smith doesn't really bother me because he played 13 games last season, but before that he played 4,
Mhm.
11, and 2.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about that. And then like losing Pollard, also not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, but to me it's like you didn't just lose Pollard, like you replaced him with the guy that Pollard replaced, essentially. And I'm just like, yeah, no, the running game is not going to be good. Like, it's going to be a struggle.
Jerry Jones is like, let's pay Zeke again. And they're like, dude, we got to do CeeDee Lamb's contract. He's like, shut up. I'm busy paying Zeke. What do you have for the New York Giants?
All right. So for the Giants, I have them from 5 to 8. I just and honestly, the only reason I even have them that high is I just have so much respect for Dayball, like, and just his like understanding of the game and how to like set things up. There's work to be done on that roster.
So I had them from 4 to 7. So
Okay.
I was just like a game less than you. But I don't really respect Brian Dayball. I don't really feel like we need to anymore. Like, yeah, he was great as the offensive coordinator for the Bills when he had Josh fucking Allen for years. And then like last year, this was the narrative I heard all year going into the season last year, was they were like, oh man, you better watch out. Brian Dayball, this team made the playoffs last year. Brian Dayball, such a good
No,
coach, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like one of the only people last season who's like, this team is going to suck. They suck.
I
And
mean,
I don't care that Brian Dayball's the
I
coach.
I don't I don't disagree that like we shouldn't have been high on them last year. I would also say we know well enough to know that if your quarterback categorically sucks, like it doesn't matter who the coach is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, and so, like some of this is probably on Dable. Like, why are they still going with this Daniel Jones project?
You had a chance to draft a bunch of other quarterbacks
Yep.
this year. Yeah, the only other thing I wrote down is like actually look at the defense, and I'm like, okay, like you got Brian
Yeah.
Burns, you got Kevon Thibodeau. I'm like that could be a pretty nasty like 1-2 pass rush. Like
Yeah.
kind of see it a little bit with the defense. And then I remember that Danny Dimes is their quarterback, and I'm like, there's a
Yeah.
ceiling. There's a ceiling for any team that has a bad quarterback as their starter.
Yep.
And I'm sorry for any Giants fans that are listening to this that somehow still disagree with me, but Danny Dimes is a bad starter.
Yeah.
Like he's a bottom third of the league starter, probably lower. This one will be fun. What do you have for the Philadelphia Eagles?
I have them from 9 to 13. I don't see them being below 500. I just don't. And if everything hits, yeah, like I could see them being like one of the best teams in the NFC. Like 13 wins is kind of where you end up. But like this is the most unsure I've been about an Eagles team heading into this season as I've been in a very long time. And kind of expect them to be closer to the 9 than the 13.
So I think this is going to be like hot takey for people, and maybe that's okay. I have the Eagles between 7 and 10 this year. The over under is 10.5. I will be betting the under for the season. Like I said in my biggest narrative, I don't know that they've actually fixed the defense. You're relying a lot on a couple rookie DBs, which is a pretty like difficult spot to transition to in the NFL. And then you signed a bunch of guys, but like you spent so much money on Saquon Barkley that I really think could have been spent at other areas on your defense that need improving. That I'm like, I don't know that this team has their priorities 100% correct.
Yeah.
I think Saquon's great, and he may even be great this season for them. But I look at the defense still as a major concern for me. I look at how shitty the offense was at the end of the season. They brought in Kellen Moore to be their offensive coordinator. And all I've heard for years is how great of an offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is. And I'm like, please show me the evidence. I feel like he's another guy who was just boosted up because he was Dallas's offensive coordinator. And people are like, this guy, top 5 offensive coordinator in the league. I'm like, okay, went to the Chargers and they didn't make the playoffs. So,
yeah.
Okay. And like I said, they just might be my bad vibes team. Like I wrote down story between Sirianni and Hurts, where like I feel like they're going to want to get rid of Sirianni halfway through the season and like promote Vic Fangio or Kellen Moore to that head coaching role. And maybe they'll be better for it. But if they get to that point, it's going to mean they're pretty bad and that they're going to be chasing 500 the rest of the season. So I kind of agree with you. I see them more around the 8 to 9 win range than I do being higher than that. But especially with the loss
of just think, and maybe it's to a lesser degree, I don't think that it's all that wild to say that they're going to get a little bit of a similar treatment from the NFL that the Cowboys are going to get to. Because it's not like you don't see like Eagles jerseys walking around. It's definitely been one of the more bandwagony fan bases over the last like 10 years.
I mean, they did beat someone in a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. I can't remember who, but they beat someone.
Yeah. So, I mean, they put butts in seats and they put eyes on the TV. Like, I think they're probably going to get a couple of favors here and there too.
Maybe, but I think it's also equally as interesting for the NFL if they're like 4-7 and Nick Sirianni gets, or like 4-6 and Nick Sirianni gets fired and like they start coming back. And I don't know. The Eagles are the team right now where I feel like I'm hearing a ton of Eagles hype and I'm not buying it. I'm zagging on the Eagles. What do you have for the Washington could have been named Fighting Georges, but won't pay me my $5 million for marketing? It's like the worst decision. The worst
It
decision that
truly is.
ugh.
Honestly, I mean, like, that's a little, that's a low asking price.
For the guys that own that team, $5
Yeah,
million is nothing.
they
And
wipe their ass with that.
you wouldn't, I'll take the $5 million you wiped your ass with.
Yeah,
That's fine. But
we launder our money anyways.
yeah, it's okay. Literally, literally gonna launder it. They're like, you're not supposed to wash it, you idiot. Like, yeah.
God, I spent so many years as a kid, like, honestly thinking that, like, leaving cash in my pocket and going through the laundry was illegal.
It's amazing. I picture your dad like walking downstairs and you're crying by the dryer, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And you're like, "I laundered my money." But you don't have to be called the Commanders anymore.
Uh,
You don't have to have that stupid little W, the little Wario W on the front of your
yeah,
helmets. You could have the sickest logo in the NFL of like just picture basically the Fighting Irish guy, but it's
yeah,
George Washington, the
yeah.
father of the greatest country on earth. He is not, no, not really. He's not really the father of Switzerland, but what do you have for the commies?
Oof, that's a phrase. I got them from 5 to 8.
Are you more offended I called them the commies or that I said Switzerland's the greatest country on earth?
Uh, Honestly, I'm not really offended by either. I just think both of those were interesting choices.
I have the commies at 5 to 9. So
Okay.
we're like right in the same area. They're over under a 6.5. So I actually like I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm kind of tempted to take the over.
They're not going to have one of the harder schedules. And as far as we know, yeah, I think they'll be able to squeak out a couple more wins than maybe is expected. But yeah, I mean, still at the end of the day, rookie QB, a lot of changes over there. Like, not expecting a ton of wins, but it should be interesting to watch.
I think it's an interesting team because I really like a lot of the pieces they have.
Yeah.
Like offensively, it's McLaurin, Dotson, um, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, who,
Yep.
Austin Eckler's washed. I won't be buying Austin Eckler stock, but he's still an upgrade over Antonio Gibson, who was in that spot last year. So, like, you have some good pieces on offense, you have some good pieces on defense, but then you also have like major gaping holes on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
We're like offensively, it's like, oh yeah, we got all these cool skill position guys, but our offensive line is horrific, like near the bottom of the league. And
Yeah.
then defensively, you have like one of the best defensive lines, but you have holes in your linebacking core and secondary.
Hmm.
So I expect them to be more around like the 5 to 6 win area, but I put 9 on my range just because like I feel like there is this chance that Jaden Daniels comes in and with his rushing ability and his like mobility in general, that he has like a diet RG3 kind of effect.
Yeah.
And he has like an awesome rookie season, like when you combine his passing and his rushing. And if he can stay healthy, they get to like 8, 9 wins and then make the playoffs. And then he tears his ACL and he's never the same player again. Hopefully not. I hope he's good. Um, but just being like an older rookie and having played so much football, I could see him getting off to a better start than even like Caleb Williams. Like just being a little bit more comfortable and like a little bit more ready to play like week 1, week 2. I still obviously like Caleb Williams and Drake May more long term than Jaden Daniels, but like I do think if he gets off to a good start, I wouldn't be shocked. And I could see them winning like 1 or 2 more games than expected because he does.
Yeah. No, I think that's entirely possible.
All right. What is your bold prediction for the NFC East?
Jaden Daniels is going to end the year as we'll call it top 8 fantasy quarterback. Yeah, with the rushing that he brings, like his floor is going to be pretty high. Potentially, he is playing in Cliff Kingsbury offense, and he excels at the slot fade, and he gets Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, who can just run that all day. So, like, he could have some absolutely massive games with the guys that he's set up with right now.
I don't hate that take. Obviously, I just kind of laid out the case as well that
Yep.
with the rushing and stuff, he could have a pretty good season. My two concerns for him, well, I guess kind of to back up your point, is we saw when Kyler Murray was healthy, how good he could be and how many fantasy points he could put up in that Cliff Kingsbury offense.
And he's a much larger quarterback than Kyler Murray.
Well, but I was going to say, it's funny I say that because my concern
he
is that
absolutely going to run himself into the ground.
Yes, I compare Jay when we did the NFL draft podcast, my comp for Jaden Daniels was tall Kyler Murray because he's very slight and some of the hits he took in college, like woof. If you don't get down and get out of bounds,
tall Kyler Murray that thinks they're Derrick Henry.
A little bit for sure. But I just could see Jaden Daniels, like, even if he doesn't get hurt, doing the same thing Kyler Murray does, where it's like the first 8 games, dude, holy shit, this guy's a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And then he's dinged up and all of a sudden the accuracy's gone and he's throwing the ball away.
That's why it's a bold take.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with it. I'm just saying I could see it on one hand, but also this is my concern about him in general. So I think it's a good bold take. My bold prediction, Rico Dowdle leads all Cowboys running backs in total yards and goes over 1,000 total yards this season. My guy has 529 career yards. He played 4 seasons at South Carolina and never had 1,000 total yards in a season in college. So this is bold for sure. But I look at who's there right now for the Cowboys. They have old Zeke, Royce Freeman, Snoop Connor, Deuce Vaughn. Somebody has to step up. Like, I think it's going to be a committee, but someone has to step up and kind of be the leader of the committee. And Dowdle has the profile of basically Tony Pollard, except a little bit less athletic. So, he can catch passes. They're kind of the same size, except like they're both 6 foot and Dowdle's just like a little bit bigger. But I remember how good Tony Pollard was in that offense before he had to be the lead back. And I'm like, dude, if you could just kind of slide into that role, Rico, and you run for like 750 and catch like, 250 or shift those a little bit, it's like 600, 400, like whatever. I could see him getting to 1,000 yards this season just by virtue of somebody has to get that work. Like they're not going to not use the running backs at all. And he's been there a while, so I think they like him the most.
Yeah, the question is, do you do anything with the work you get? That is the question.
But it's 1,000 yards doesn't sound like a lot, but I feel like it's
that's
bold.
Like probably around like 55 to 60 yards per game at this point.
It's also like double his career total right now. And he never got to 1,000 yards in college, not once. So who are you picking to win the NFC East?
I'm going to take the Eagles because I feel like I'm going to feel stupid if I don't and they win the division. And I will throw up if I pick the Cowboys.
Yeah, I have the Cowboys. Not because I particularly think they're a great team this year, but just because, like I said, manifest destiny. Got to win double-digit games. Got to build your fans' hopes up before you disappoint them. Got to win the division. But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up at Gmail, fouledOutSports@gmail.com. And you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. This podcast is dropping August 13th, Tuesday. On Friday, August 16th, we'll have the AFC East preview, home of my beloved New England Patriots. who are supposed to be very, very, very good this season. Lots to look forward to in that preview. And then for the next 2 weeks after that, Matt and I will be dropping 2 podcasts a week until we have previewed all 8 divisions in the NFL leading up to the NFL season. And then week 1 will be our picks pod where we fill out the wild cards, award winners. We're going to read our favorite fan submitted bold predictions. Got a couple good ones so far that I think will be fun. And start giving you guys our favorite picks this year for Thursday Night Football. We're going to do 1 pick for Thursday Night Football since the podcast will probably come out on Thursdays this year. And then 1 pick for the weekend from both me and Matt. So lots to look forward to on that podcast as well. But for now, my friend, good preview. I will see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, guys. Bye, Mom.
Bye, Robin.